Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to the Men's Quest. Today, I want to discuss the importance of recognizing and releasing shame, because shame is at the root of toxic masculinity. For many men, this is the biggest challenge in their life: is recognizing and releasing shame, and it's something which we're really people in general go through. I mean, shame isn't limited to men. Women experience shame, other identified gendered people experience shame, men experience shame. How we experience shame may differ from person to person. It may not. I'm not going to really speak for other people, but I will speak to the masculine experience of shame because that's the experience that I have. When I was growing up, I was shamed regularly by my father. He would tell me what a disappointment I was and how I didn't measure up. I didn't realize it at the time, but really it was an expression of his own inner shame. The shame that he undoubtedly had experienced at the hands of his father and family. I recognized this many years later when I found lots of newspaper clippings that my grandmother had evidently saved of all the times the last name of Elwood was mentioned or the name of one of the kids was mentioned. And I realized that there was likely an intense amount of pressure to show up for my dad and his sister and show up in a way that caused the Elwood name to stand out in a good way. And I mean, if I were to really go and explore this, I would probably find that there was a fair amount of this pattern that goes back even further in the history of my family on my father's side. So that's definitely one aspect of shame that I can point to. I can even point to the shame that I felt sometimes with my mom. Shame. I've been shamed for my weight, for example, and recognizing that really is a reflection on probably comments that she heard from her mom. I don't know that she heard them from her dad, but stuff that she heard that made her worry about her weight, and consequently, she would put that on me. So I share that as an example that shame can come in many different forms. For me, there's been body shaming at times. There's also been shaming around how much I've gotten done or not gotten done. Even recently, I had an experience where I had shame. I got into a conversation about something that I had something where I had asked a question, and the question ended up triggering the person. And I didn't mean to trigger the person. It certainly wasn't my intention. But what I didn't recognize at the time was that I was drawing off of certain patterns of my own that were causing me to continually bring up a topic that was problematic. This person justifiably called me out, and we ended up discussing it, and I figured it out. But I ended up feeling a lot of shame at the time, and I realized that part of it was feeling shame because I felt like I was a little boy all over again, being sent to my room and being punished. And I realized that what it had done is that it actually evoked the shame that I felt as a result of having grown up with my stepmom. My stepmom had shamed me in many different ways, and a lot of the ways she shamed me was that no matter what I did, I was never good enough. It didn't matter that I cleaned the dishes. It didn't matter that I took out the garbage. It didn't matter that I took care of the house. It didn't matter that I did all the other things that I did. What mattered is that it wasn't good enough for her, and that I got grounded a lot. It didn't matter that I did it the best I could with the grades that I had. I still ended up getting shamed for it. So share that because I think a lot of times if we want to recognize shame, we have to recognize where shame originated from. Shame doesn't occur in a void. It happens in a place where certain things happen. It doesn't just happen with our parents. Like I dealt with three different parents, but it also can happen in other contexts. I mean, I can definitely point to other moments in my life where I have felt shame as a result of something that someone said, whether it was a classmate or someone I was involved with intimately. One of my more recent relationships, for example, I experienced a fair amount of shaming on a regular basis, where the person would basically tear me down, start with sarcastic jibes and comments. Instead of really speaking to what was bothering that person. That was their response. So what I ended up learning, what I've learned about shame really is that a lot of times too, when people shame you, they're really operating from a place of their own inner sense of shame. They may not even realize it. And again, this is no judgment on any one person, because the fact of the matter is, if you don't know, you don't know. And a lot of times we don't know where that sense of shame is coming from. But when we feel shame in our body, and I'm going to really kind of use this as an example, when we feel shame in our body, it's something where we really do feel within our body itself. For me, shame, for example, is like in my chest and my stomach, and particularly the sides. Really, I'm actually going to stand up here so you can kind of see. Um, when I'm feeling shame, I feel shame right here a lot of the time. And it's interesting because I had not been aware of how much that part of my body was where I locked in a lot of my stress, but I've come to recognize it, because I've been paying closer attention to my body in the last year in particular. I've been paying much closer attention to my body as I've gone through some experiences, and I've come to recognize that when I feel shame or other things, it gets locked into this area around my hips. And so what I do is if I'm feeling particularly heavy in those areas, or I'm feeling a sense of hollowness or emptiness in my solar plexus, my chest area, that's when I know physically that shame has been activated. And what I will do then is I will start paying attention to the emotional aspects of that as well. I'll look at what I'm doing. Am I becoming cold and withdrawn? A lot of times, if I've become cold and withdrawn from a situation, it's because I'm feeling a deep sense of shame, and I'm trying to work my way through that. But as a result, I've become cold and withdrawn because I don't want anyone to witness me in my shame. I don't want someone to see me in that place. But here's the interesting thing that I'm learning, and I'm not saying that this would apply to you, but this is a good example. Is that that pattern doesn't really work. It doesn't help me resolve the issue with somebody else if I have an issue with somebody else. So the pattern that really works for me, the one that really kind of helps me to address this, is if I actually end up talking with the person and staying relatively warm and engaged. Sharing with the person, here's what's going on with me, letting that person in, opening my heart to them. Now, that can be hard to do when you're feeling a sense of shame, because shame is really, if we look at shame, shame's different from guilt. Guilt is, I feel bad about something I did. Shame is, I feel bad for existing. There's a very real and distinct difference there. And if you're curious to learn more about shame, one resource I'm going to recommend, there's some excellent books out there by Brené Brown where she talks about it. Reading those books helped me initially start on my journey to discover and work through and release my shame. And since then I've been doing a lot more work around it. But those books helped out a lot. So I'd recommend her books if you get a chance, or check out her TED Talk or Netflix special. When we feel a sense of shame, though, it locks us down. It stops us from really being present with the people in our lives. So it's really important to be gentle with yourself, not beat yourself up for feeling shame. Shame is a normal experience. It is something we've all grown up with. At the same time, it's really useful to try and break out of that sense of shame. If I recognize that I am feeling shame for something, what can I do about it? What can I change? These are the things that I want to be thinking about when I'm experiencing a sense of shame. So in my case, what I like to do is I will step out of, I will start engaging with a person if I feel safe with that person. If the person doesn't make me feel safe, I'm not going to try and engage them, because the chances are they're just going to push deeper into shame. For example, one person I mentioned that where a more recent relationship, trying to engage that person when it came to shame was just an exercise in futility. That person used any vulnerability against me. So I learned eventually not to, and I got out of that relationship, which was a good thing. But I would say with the person that I'm with now, that person I can talk about stuff. So I can be like, if I have an experience where there is a sense of shame around an interaction, I can be like, I can open up to that person, and I'm learning to open up to that person and trust that person. It takes time because we also learn with shame not to trust other people, because if I'm feeling really vulnerable and I'm feeling attacked and basically feeling like I'm a bad person because of the other person, or I'm telling myself I'm a bad person, why am I going to open up further? Why am I going to share myself? I'm not. And that's the thing that I think is important to recognize, is that when we share, we need to share from a place of safety and groundedness, and that means finding the right people to share with. One thing that really helped me was sharing with my online men's group. I ended up breaking down and crying and just sharing the shame that I was feeling at the time. It was hard to do, but I knew those men. I trusted them, and it actually gave me the courage to share then with um, the person I'd had the interaction with recently, because of the shame that I was feeling at the time, and then that allowed me to release it. We release shame when we learn how to share it in a way that is safe and supportive. Now, you can do that with a therapist. You can do it with a men's coach like me. I'm certainly someone who can help you with that. You can also do it in a men's group. And of course, most importantly, I would encourage you to do it with a person that you feel safe with, if that person and you have had an interaction where shame got brought up. Again, if it's somebody that you don't feel safe with, don't put yourself into that situation, because it's not going to help you. It's just going to traumatize you further. And you don't need further trauma in your life if you can help it. But I just want to, in closing, I just want to say that shame is a very normal experience. It is something, unfortunately, that we all experience. And the most important thing you can do is actually learn to bring it out into the open, because the less you embed it within yourself, the less power it has, and the more you are able to liberate and empower yourself to move forward in your life and to have the kinds of relationships that you really want to have with other people. All right. Hope you have a wonderful day, and please feel free to leave a comment or reach out if you're struggling with shame. I'm happy to help you in any way I can. Thank you, and take care.